What's up, nerds? Welcome back to the Raging Rainbow. My name is Dylan, doing a comic book review today of Radiant Black number 3. Right? Number 3. Yeah, number 3. So let's get into this because, again, this series, it's not doing all that great as far as being like a superhero series, but as far as being something that you should read, especially if you want to go into like any type of creative field, especially comic book writing with this issue, then this is something you should definitely be reading. So weird to be recommending something on that merit, but let's get into it. So basically we start out with Nathan's dad, who is waking up early in the morning, and he's walking to the kitchen. We can see he's like yawning, still sleepy, and he walks into the kitchen to see Nathan's already like cooking breakfast, and he's like, "Whoa, didn't expect to see you here." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I woke up early today because I wanted to like get a start on some writing, and I like waking up early because it makes me feel like, I'm getting a head start on everybody." And I can absolutely attest to that. If you're not the type of person who wakes up early in the morning, get into it. Get into waking up at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning just for no reason. Not because you have to, not because you got to go to school, not because you have to go to work. Try getting into that habit. I've done it, and it actually makes you feel a lot better because, like he said, it makes you feel like you're getting a head start on the day. It makes you feel like you have so much more of your time. The one trade-off you have to make is that you have to start going to bed at a more sensible hour. So no more like pulling late nights past midnight. Midnight might be your cutoff. That was about the latest I used to like stay up. I don't really have that sleep schedule anymore, but when I was doing it, I really enjoyed it. So I completely got where he was coming from. Do feel free to get into that type of thing. But anyway, we turn the page from there to this like basically prose story that Nathan had written. And it's not a bad story. It's actually an okay story. It's basically the story he's telling about this like woman who used to work for banks, but then she went into like robbing banks with this man. And then during one of their like heists or whatever, right after they get the money and it's put into the car, I guess all of a sudden like the cops or someone started shooting at them, and he died, but she took off. And so like as a result of that, she's driving away. And instead of feeling like sad that like this guy who she was in love with is like dead, instead she starts laughing and she feels happy because she finally realizes like, oh, I finally am like out of that like criminal life. Because with him, like they would do the bank heist and then swear like, okay, we're going to go start a new life and we're going to be different people. But then they would have to do that again and again and again and again. So when she realizes like he's dead and I have all the money, I can finally actually do whatever I want. Like I don't have to go into that same cycle again because he's not here. Like it's not going to be because of him anymore. So not a bad setup, but he's trying to like continue writing that story because as we find out from his like thought bubbles or whatever, this is a story like he wrote 2 years ago. So he's coming back to it. He's like, okay, this was a good premise. It's a good little like short story, but it's just like a snapshot in time. It's a tiny little piece. It's not a whole story. And I don't even know what I was going towards. I just wrote this down, which is something you have to do. If you have a little piece like this or something, write it down, type it out. It doesn't have to be something you develop into a story right this moment, but get it out. And then if you come back to it 6, 7 months or even a year or two later, and you look at it, you're like, you might look at it from a different perspective. You might read it and have some different inspiration about where the story could go, which is actually what he's struggling with here, because he's trying to figure out like, okay, what story is it that I'm trying to tell for her? And so he says, or actually he's trying to like, he's figured. This is another thing that happens with writers. I notice it a lot because I tend to, I like to write myself. And one thing that I used to do a lot was I would edit every single one of like some of my friends and my sister's like papers for college. Because like I would tell them, write it however you're thinking, however you would say it, however you would explain it out loud, write it that way. And then send it to me and I will refine it so it sounds more academic. So that's what I would do. And that's basically what he's going through, where he's like looking at this and he's like, this sentence would look better if I put commas instead. And he's like, no, it's not good that way. And then you go back to just periods. And he's like, actually, maybe if I do a dash or whatever. But then his mom comes up and is like, oh, this is a new story you're writing. She's like, oh, no, wait, I've read this one before, but you're working on it again. So he's like, Mom, I don't want to do this with you right now. He's like, I just need to leave. So he takes off from there and he goes to his room to like try and work on it. But we see he's watching. Y'all remember that video of the like lawyer who was on Zoom? He was like, I am not a cat. That's literally what he's watching. Like they just put that in there. So when I saw that, it did make me laugh because I do remember seeing that, and I was still working for a law firm when that happened, and wow, did I laugh so hard at that. But anyway, we see this thing where he had like an alarm set, like telling him like, okay, you had enough time just like goofing off, looking at stuff on YouTube. Now get back to writing. So he's like, okay, time to get real about this. So then he's getting ready to start, and it's kind of like that moment out of SpongeBob with like the thing, just like, I mean, look at it. We all understand this feeling just several hours later. Like, so we go on from there, and he's trying to figure it out. He's trying to think of like different ways he can keep developing the story, but like every way he tries to go about it, he's like, this just sounds stupid. This was a stupid idea. Like, what made you think you can do this anyway? So he's trying to like snap himself out of that way of thinking, because as you can see from like the thought bubbles, they have this like little blue like outline around them, basically saying that these are like thoughts inspired by the energy source or whatever it is that is giving him his powers. So he's getting more and more frustrated with like what he's trying to write. And this like voice in his head is telling him, you know, throw it out, shred it, burn it all. This is the opposite of radiant. And that's where he's like, wait, what? So we cut from there to this scene of his like best friend who works at, I guess it's like a video store, right? Which, do those even still exist? I guess they do. Like, they might be like small mom and pop things, but ever since like Blockbuster's pretty much gone away, like, video store? Really? All right. So at the video store, his friend works, and he's like talking to this one customer or whatever when Nathan comes in. And he's basically telling him like, yeah, I've been trying to figure out a name for you, like for your alter ego or whatever. And he's basically telling him like, what makes you even think that like I need a name? Like, what makes you think I'm a superhero? I was like, dude, you have powers, you have a costume, all of that crap. Obviously you need a superhero name. So because Nathan has been like hearing this like this word over and over, radiant, so he basically tells him like, okay, well, what about something having to do with radiant? And that's where his friend was like, okay, there's some potential there. So then he thinks of something, and he like types on his phone. He's like, okay, are you ready for what I have? He's like, what is it? He says, radiant black. And immediately Nathan is just like nonplussed. He's like, come on, dude, like that's awesome. Like, you don't think that's great? But he told him like, well, when I use my powers, it comes out blue, not black. So shouldn't my name have something to do with blue? And so his friend tells him like, yeah, but like you don't call the things you see in space, they're not called blue holes, they're black holes. And he tells him that like black is great, classic, super sexy. So he tells him like, Nathan tells him like, well, wouldn't it be black radiant? He's like, well, yeah, I guess if you were a 70s Marvel character. He's like, but come on, this is going to be dope. So he tells him that he already basically started like the Twitter handle for Radiant Black. He's like, dude, what the hell? Like, I didn't even approve it. You're already just putting it out there. And so his friend tries to tell him like, look, you need to get control of the narrative. If you want your story to be told properly, you need to be the one telling it. So Nathan's like, you know what? I don't have time for this. He just takes off. But of course his friend is like, don't worry, I'll send you the login or whatever. So he leaves, and he's going from there, and we keep seeing like all of these like thought bubbles, but as it's like going, because this time it's kind of like raging about his friend, but as it's like going, because then it turns to like more insulting Nathan, all of a sudden we see like some of the alien language like thrown in there. So he gets this moment where he looks over and he goes into this bar and decides, you know what, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna have a drink, and I'm gonna try to write by hand, which I appreciate. That's something that I tend to do sometimes, like writing by hand, though it tends to start hurting. There's nothing better than the classics, right? So he sits down to start doing that, and the story isn't working the way that he wants. Like he doesn't think he's getting anywhere at first, because he says that like basically the idea he comes up with at first is like a CBS procedural or whatever. So he goes from there, and then he actually starts to like hatch upon an idea. So he starts like actually writing once he's on his second beer, which again plays into actual life. So he goes back home and he's sitting down like typing, but then we can see on like the computer screen, I guess, it comes out as like the alien language, which I'm pretty sure that's not one of the keyboard languages that Apple has on their computers. But anyway, I guess that's how he's reading it. And then all of a sudden he has this like vision where this being that looks exactly like him in his superhero alter ego, except with a cape, which does look kind of cool because it's like glowing or whatever. That looks kind of nice. But then this being grabs him, flies off into like the air. And so he's trying, like, it's talking to him in the alien language again. And he's like, I don't understand. Like, who are you? And then the like helmet fades and I think it's him. Like, it looks like him, right? Like a future version. Whenever they have a future version, they always have like a goatee. So that's why I'm figuring it's probably just a future version. And he's like, he tells him like, I'm something that you'll never be, worth breathing. I was like, damn, that was harsh. So he immediately drops him and then he's like falling. But then, of course, that falling sensation caused him to wake up. Because like I said, it was just a vision. It was a dream. And he realized like, shit, I fell asleep and I didn't write anything at all. So he's sitting there and he's like trying to figure out like what he's going to do. But then right at that moment, someone on Twitter was saying like, yo, I could use like the help of Radiant Black. And then he shows up to where they're actually needed because it was like this family. They have like a flat tire. And as you can see, the dad has a broken arm and apparently the mom does not know how to change a tire. So he shows up to like help them or whatever. He's like, yo, what can I do to help out? And at first I thought it was the kid who probably tweeted at him, but no, the dad says, yo, it was me that tweeted, but I thought you were just like a cosplayer. I thought it was a joke, which is like, if that's the case and your family is in an actual situation, because apparently they're also trying to get to like a game or whatever before like it starts. And so it's like, if that's the case and you're really that pressed for time, why did you stop and take the time to like tweet to what you imagined was an imaginary superhero? Why wouldn't you get out and start trying to work on the vehicle first or calling someone to help? But anyway, so we go on from there. And he's like, all right, yeah, I'll help y'all out. And so he immediately like, the son tells him like, don't you literally have anything better to do right now? Which is like, dude, do you want to get to where you're going or not? Then shut the hell up. So he's like, yeah, would you believe me if I said no? So the dad is like, oh, don't worry. Like, we appreciate the help, whatever, especially since you have two hands to actually help. And so he tries to help in the normal way. He tries to actually help change a tire, but he doesn't know how to change a tire, I guess, because he's a grown man, but he's a writer. So I know how to change a tire and I write. So I don't know what, but okay. So he tries and fails, and then he like messes it up, and then the car falls. So for some reason, the kid assumes that like being a superhero means you know how to change a tire. I don't know why he's conflating those two, because it's like if you think that only like superheroes just inherently know how to change a tire, wouldn't that mean like all mechanics are superhero? Like, you see? So anyway, we go back. And he's like, he has this little moment where he gets all pissy. He's like, I don't know, man. Why do I have to be great at everything? No one's saying you have to be great at everything, but you should at least be proficient at something, which thus far we have yet to see you be good at anything, whether it be superheroing, adulting, writing, whatever it is. You're just not good at it, any of it. So I would love to see anything you are good at. So he goes on from there, and then the dad's basically telling him, like, yeah, you know, we have somewhere to go. Because the mom's trying to tell him, like, yo, don't worry. Like, we understand you're trying your best. And the dad's like, yeah, but his best is not getting us any closer to where we need to be. He's like, oh, okay, so where y'all trying to go? And then we see this moment where he's flying them. And he has a scarf on because earlier the mom was like, you don't have a scarf out here or anything? It's freezing. You must be cold. So I guess she, like, gave him this cat scarf, and he's wearing it. So from there, he goes back home, and he's like, well, so much for a writing day, because now it's 2:00 in the morning. And he lays down. He's like, well, maybe better luck next time. And he lays down. But then all of a sudden, as he's lying there, and I've had this happen to me so many times, like you come home completely exhausted, ready to just fall asleep. You're lying there ready for that to happen. And all of a sudden, the eyes open up because, wait a minute, I have an idea. So he starts just writing. And he basically writes into the morning hours. And again, his dad is waking up, coming down the room, and he like taps on his door, and he expects to see him asleep or whatever, but no, he was actually just writing. So he's telling him like, yeah, you know, I was getting some work done here. I was writing, And so his dad's like, oh, okay, well, I was gonna go make some breakfast. And he's like, okay, yeah, great. I would love some, because he knew that's why he was coming. So his dad tells him, like, okay, then I'm glad it was a productive day. He's like, yeah, me too. This time. So he's basically like, this time it's going to be a productive day, because yesterday sure as hell wasn't it, but now I'm actually getting something done. So this time it's going to be a productive day. So again, like I said, like, it's far, because there was no like superhero action. The only time we even saw like the costume, it wasn't even Nathan wearing it. It was this like illusion or this vision that he had. So there wasn't any actual superhero action happening in this. But again, like I said with the previous issue, the one thing that this comic book series does seem to be good at is like teaching a lesson to people who are trying to figure out how to get their lives together, or how to actually start their life. Because I'm noticing this is a thing with people around my age and just a few years younger than me. People just have no idea what they're supposed to do. Everybody assumes that like everything's supposed to fall into place for them, and then they're just going to fall into whatever it is they're supposed to do. No, sometimes you actually have to put in the work and start like scratching out that position in whatever it is you want to be, which is basically what he's proving here. Like, him trying to do this writing thing throughout the issue was basically him trying to get his actual life going. Now they contrast that by having like the superhero stuff enter into his life, which is kind of like something you can analogize to your own personal life, in that that's how life just in general tends to get in the way. It doesn't have to be like superhero stuff, like helping a family, like flying them to wherever they're going to get to. I've had this type of moment where like you swear, I'm going to get up early, this is going to be a productive day, and then you actually manage to get up early, and it doesn't turn out to be that type of day. A million other things come up, or sometimes you just can't find the energy to get doing what you actually had to do. And so that's where I'm saying, like, this is a good thing for that, because a lot of people tend to get bogged down when they like have that day where they don't get as much done as they wanted to, and that causes them to have multiple days after that where they just don't do as much because they assume they can't. You can. Sometimes you just have a day where life gets in the way. That happens. Life gets in the way sometimes, in more way than one, but you have to keep making progress. And even if like this, you saw where he's exhausted. He was exhausted. He comes home at 2:00 in the morning from doing all this stuff. And then because he just happened to have an idea, he's like, you know what? I'm going to get some work done on this. Was he tired? Yeah. But he was like, you know what? I have the motivation. I have the idea right now. I'm going to get it down while I can. It's better to seize the moment while you have it than wish that you had when it's gone. So again, sorry to like, go off on this random tangent about life in general, but that's basically what I get from reading this. Like, I don't get like a straightforward like superhero vibe from this book. I get this type of thing that like people should be reading this because this should just like help you to figure out life in general, because it seems like everybody's trying to figure out how to figure out life nowadays. So I mean, if you're looking for a way, maybe read this, because the struggle that Nathan is going through just as a person kind of fits into what I hear from a lot of people nowadays, because I've talked to a lot of people, having been a server and a bartender before. Like, I've talked to a lot of people, and especially people like around my age. Like, this is something that the type of struggles that I'm seeing him go through here, this is stuff that we all deal with on the regular. But the problem is, so many people don't know how to actually deal with it, which is a problem, because they go years not knowing how to deal with that. So seeing him actually realize that, and I mean, this could be like playing off of like some of Kyle Higgins' own personal experience or whatever, but I mean, this is where I'm saying like this is good advice, just, or I guess like good learning material for anyone who might be going through this, especially like I said earlier, if you're like trying to get into like writing, especially comic book writing, this is a good thing to go off of, because like he says in here, like, when you, just because you don't have anything coming out, you don't feel the drive, you don't feel the inspiration to write, that doesn't mean you shouldn't. Write every day. Keep writing. Even if it's not good, you can throw it away. No one's telling you you have to print what you wrote, but just write. Get into that writing routine. Get used to it. Find some solace in it. Do that, and eventually you will start getting to the point where you're actually writing great stuff, because you flex that literary muscle over and over again. But anyway, that's enough of me just going off on random tangents connected to this book, or basically like what I gleaned from this book. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me. And if you've read this book, I would love to know what you think about it. Do you think the story is getting any better? How do you rate it as far as it being like a superhero story? Because I know where I put it, it's not that high up on the list as far as being a superhero story, but as far as just being a good story, it is that. So I'll take what I can get from it. But anyway, guys, if you do like this video, then do feel free to like the video and subscribe if you want to come back for more comic book reviews. And if you're done here, then go read a book. If not, then I will see you on the next video.